Okay, so Dr. Noel, would you like to get us started?
Yes. So welcome everybody. This is Thinking Gumbo, and today we are focusing on personas. But I'll tell you a little bit about Design Thinking Gumbo. It is a program that we've created to give people a taste of design research methods. We are here in New Orleans, and gumbo is a dish that people eat in New Orleans. It's a dish where we have a large mix of ingredients. So you could think of this program like that we are giving you a taste of all of these different ingredients about design research. So we've done introduced people to lots of ways of thinking about research in creative ways over the entire academic year. And today, I'm just gonna, I'm a little lost for words, Niesha. I'm just gonna hand it over to Niesha, who's a very capable one of our design thinking graduate assistants, and she's gonna lead us through the gumbo today. So Niesha, over to you.
Thank you. All right, give me one second. All right, so I'm just going to introduce myself before I kind of get started with sharing my presentation for today. So hello, everyone. Kind of like Dr. Noel said, my name is Niesha Ford. I'm a second year master's student at Tulane School of Public Health and Tropical Medicine. And if you attended any of our other programs at the Wheeler Center, you know that I'm also the host of the Design Thinking Breakfast. And I also did a workshop like this last year on cultural prose. But today we're going to be talking about personas. Let me share my screen. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Okay, perfect. So like I said, I'm Niesha Ford, and I do Design Thinking Breakfast. So for today, we're going to talk about personas. So what are personas? Who uses personas? We're going to talk about how to create a persona. We're going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of using personas. Then we're going to do an activity, and then we're going to have a discussion and debrief. Okay, so what is a persona? So a persona is an imaginary person you design for, typically built around demographic information that is supposed to create a reliable and realistic representation of your key audience. So when we're thinking about a persona, if you were to make an effective one, it should do one or more of the following. So represent a major user group for your design of focus, express and focus on the major needs and expectations of your user group, give a clear picture of the user's expectations and how they're likely to use your design, product, or service. And then it's supposed to also describe real people with backgrounds, goals, and values. So in short, a persona is a snapshot of your ideal user or customer group and is based on user research. So who uses personas? Designers, businesses, marketers, salespeople, engineers, really anyone who wants to understand customers and market products or services to people use personas. Thinking about this from a company's viewpoint, having a well-researched, analytical, and data-driven persona is hugely beneficial to a company's product development, sales strategy, and marketing campaigns, because it ensures that companies' initiatives such as marketing or product development are done with the user in mind and are considering how the user will use and engage with the product or service. So, keeping this in mind, it shows how personas can be used by various businesses, from a coffee shop to high tech industries such as Apple or even Spotify. So this is a very like bare bones, like simplistic diagram of how to build a persona. But the first thing that you're going to do is collect data about your target users. And that can be done through observation, sending out surveys, interviewing current users, skimming online threads to find key insights and more. Second is to interpret the data with your team and explore patterns in the user's behavior. This will help you to be able to visualize and understand exactly who your users are, as well as what they're doing, feeling, thinking, and saying. And lastly, it's to build the persona. This helps us empathize with our personas by making us think of them more as real people, because our goal at the end of building a persona is really to be able to answer the question, who are we designing for? So this is a little diagram that I made. It's the good, the bad, and the ugly of using personas, because I think we have to understand that although personas are beneficial, they do come with, some bad and, sometimes really ugly things about them. So why should we use personas? Well, personas help to focus decisions by adding a layer of real world considerate real word sorry, real world I'm so sorry. Real world consideration to the conversation. They also offer a quick and inexpensive way to test throughout the development process. In addition, they can help shorten research process time, and they're a great way to gain a view into the lives and perspectives of your users and really understand the question, who are we designing for? So the bad of personas are not a one size fits all deal. They should be used with a specific and well-defined goal in mind. For personas to be useful, the data captured in the persona should reflect the goal for that persona and the scope of work it's meant to impact. We also know that personal characteristics do not always influence your behavior. So, for example, just because someone's lazy doesn't mean that they don't get anything done. And then, lastly, for the bad, different people under the same persona can behave completely differently, especially when confronted with a product or service. And then when we're looking at kind of the ugliness of personas, they can be really harmful if they kind of lead to stereotyping of a certain group. And although there is a strong correlation between a persona and a behavior of a, sorry, and although there can be a strong correlation between a persona and behavior of a real person, it does not always imply that such will exist in reality. So again, this is not to say that we shouldn't use personas, but it is important to understand these drawbacks when we are designing personas. So that is the end of my lecture. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because now we are going to transition into Mural. And I'm going to put the link for that in the chat. Does anyone have any questions before we transition?
Where are people from? I'm disrupting your
Yep.
sessions. So let people put in the chat where they're joining us from.
Awesome. I'm loving all these different places. Okay, so I'm going to drop in the chat the link now. Hopefully it doesn't get lost. And then we're going to transition into Mural. All right, I see people starting to come in, so I'm actually going to share my screen again. So once you get into Mural, if you could go to this area that says Let's Get to Know Mural, it should be on the left side. I'm going to give everyone a minute to get there. A lot of people popping in. All right. So it looks like quite a few people are there. So this activity is going to serve two purposes. One, it's a really quick icebreaker, kind of like what Leslie was doing. But also it's going to make sure that everybody kind of has one skill out of this workshop. And it looks like some of you guys already are jumping the gun. But it's really to make sure that everyone knows how to create sticky notes. So the instructions are for you to create a sticky note and write your name and where you're from. Seems like a lot of you guys are already getting ahead, but if you need help creating a sticky note, you can do so by kind of going over here where it says text, clicking here and dragging a sticky note onto the board. And then once the sticky note's on the board, you can just tap it and start typing. Another way that I do it is I kind of double click or I right click on my tab or my mouse, and then you should get an add sticky note icon. And if anyone needs help with that or needs me to repeat that, just let me know. And yeah, I'm going to give everyone a minute to kind of do what they did in the chat on the mural board before we get started in our first activity. And I'm actually going to ask two people to share where they're from. Okay. All right. So does anyone want to share where they're from and their name? People are still waiting, so I'll give everyone a few more seconds if you don't want to share yet.
We have some interesting, really interesting places. Not that everybody's place is not interesting, but some places are more interesting than others. Maybe you could call them out, Niesha.
Okay. Let's see what I see. Okay. So all right. I see Venezuela, South Korea, Seattle, San Francisco, New Orleans, Richmond, Egypt. Wow. Wow, yeah, people all over the place. New Orleans, Miami, Japan. All Well, let's get started with our first activity. Let me get the outline. Okay, so for our first activity, we will be working in mural, and these are your instructions. So you are design consultants at company ABC Corporation, and COVID-19 just hit, and you are getting requests for home office designs. Your company created a persona for your team and put it in each of your breakout rooms. So, in your breakout room, as a consultation team, design the ideal home office space for your persona by writing the characteristics of the home of the office space on sticky notes. So, for example, if you get the persona Iggy the influencer, you may write on the sticky note, because Iggy is an influencer, he may want a selfie light attached to his desk. Does that make sense? So I'm going to zoom out so everybody can see the breakout rooms. And I'm going to stop sharing so I can open the breakout rooms. But as I'm doing that, please let me know if you have a question. You may also need to zoom out so you can get to your room and kind of move around the board. But I'm going to stop sharing. And then I'm going to create the breakout rooms. Okay. Hello, everyone is back. I did not realize I was muted. I was talking to the first group that came back.
Excuse me, I don't see either of the interpreters on screen. Am I missing something?
Oh,
You need to pin them over. Yes.
there we go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Are they on screen now? I can't tell when I'm sharing my screen. Okay, perfect. Okay, so would any group like to volunteer to share what they've kind of the characteristics they came up with for their persona?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Which group were you in?
I was in group 1.
Okay, awesome. All right.
I had a persona who was named Mark.
Yeah. Yeah.
But not me, just another Mark. He's going to be working from home full time. The coronavirus pandemic unfortunately required that. We were given, as a team, we partnered on our listing of characteristics and trying to come up with a home office space and what that would look like. So what we would try to create is a space in the room which has a very large work surface, because he required 3 monitors or 3 computer screens. And so that would allow him easy access to work. Also, we listed we'd like Mark to have the ability to stand and move around to access his workspace, also a chair, but instead of sitting all the time, he would need to be able to stand up and work standing as well. So that work surface would need to be adjustable in height. Additionally, we suggested a whiteboard. So that would allow him the possibility of posting some ideas. And also a window we suggested, which seems to be a great option. That way he'll have the option to look outside, get some sunlight, and see the progression of the day. And plants also in his workspace, which would bring the outdoors in. And that's all we got to, I guess, at that point.
All right, awesome. All right, I'm gonna zoom out. Is there any other group? Maybe group 2 looks like they got, or group 3? Both look like they got a lot of stuff down. No pressure, no pressure. All right. Well, if no other group wants to share, thank you so much, Mark, for sharing for group one. We're actually going to transition to the second activity. But before we do that, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a plug for the Taylor Center. So in an ideal scenario, we could be using something like this worksheet to help us get as much details as possible when we're doing interviews. This sheet really explores different ways of getting information from people during open interviews, and it helps facilitate what the interviewer is doing. Unfortunately, due to time, and you know that this is a very small workshop, we will not be using this worksheet during this workshop because it is very time consuming, but we will be doing some interviewing. So I will plug this workshop, a link to the Taylor Center where you can download this worksheet if you're interested in using it in the future. But for the second activity, we will be doing some interviewing. And your assignment for your second activity is going to be fairly similar to the first activity, except this time, one person in your group is now the client of your company, and the rest of the group is the consultation team. So the consultation team will interview the client, and based on what the client says, come up with an ideal home office space for the client. Um, just like last time, one person should in the team should be writing down the characteristics of the space on the sticky notes provided, and you can always add more. In the groups, you will see that I did put 4 questions for you to kind of get started. Those questions were inspired by the worksheet that I just talked about. You're going to go into the same breakout rooms. Do you have any questions before you go? I'm going to zoom out again so you can see the rooms. All right, I'll stop sharing my screen and I'm going to open up the rooms again. Hello. Welcome back. This time I'm not muted, so I'm actually talking to you guys.
We came back so quickly.
Welcome back. I think that's everybody. Okay, so just like last time, oops, let me make sure. All right. All right, so just like last time, I'm gonna ask groups to share out. All right, well, group 1 went last time. So can we get group 2 to go this time? Ready?
I can share.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, that went by really fast. Yeah, so we learned, I don't know about like disclosure. So we learned about a UX designer who works remotely in the same time zone, does like 9 to 5 work. And in working from home, one of the main considerations that was coming up was having better lighting.
Okay.
So I noticed that they may wear a baseball hat indoors. And so that would mean that ideally they'd have like good enough lighting also for their face and just like in terms of the space and good ergonomics. And another interesting thing that came up was like this question of how to separate, as we're doing a lot of digital work, how to separate personal and work in your digital space. So maybe having an external storage for that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm actually going to ask one more group to share.
Excellent.
All right. I'm going to group 5. You guys look like you have a lot of stuff down here. Can someone from group 5 share? I don't know who's in group 5. Shema, do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. I can go ahead.
So we kind of design a space. I'm trying to get to my Miro board, so sorry.
Okay.
Yes. So it's very interesting. He's a student and he's working in an innovative lab to bring this free Wi-Fi to the neighborhood. So he needs like an internet. He works 7 hours. We planned like a dull monitor and like a natural light. He also like to have 5 minute break between in each hour. So he need a calm and quiet space, windows. He's working from a PC, so maybe getting a larger or like, so that's what we were discussing.
Awesome. Thanks. And we have time. I'm going to say we have time for one more group. Let's see. I guess any group can go. So group 3, 4, or 1, whoever wants to.
I can share.
Okay. What group were you in?
I'm in group 3.
All right. Group 3.
So we had a really nice interview with our persona. We did not get very far in our design aspect, but one thing that I noticed from our conversation, just from everything that we asked and kind of discussed and our person shared, how easy it is for things that people say to inspire a design for an office. So, I mean, I could tell that he was specifically thinking about, things that might be relevant to an office, but not always. And so a very interesting piece that I noticed was he loves to work in coffee shops. How can we incorporate that into our design office space for this person who, might really want to enjoy kind of that community experience, but in their home office. And another really big thing that stood out was the focus on fitness. And so how we could incorporate like more reminders for water, for healthy snacks, and then also maybe there's a fitness option in his office. So we got really excited about designing the office. We didn't get very far on that part of it, but it was pretty fun to do.
Awesome. Sounds like you guys had some great ideas. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I do want to be cognizant of time and I do want to get to our last activity. So the last activity, actually I had it hidden from you guys. All right. So the last activity is this pros and cons board. So if you kind of scroll over to the right in Mural, you'll see a little pros and cons, huge board. For this activity, we're going to stay in our group, stay in this big room. And I really would just like for everybody to write at least one pro and one con for personas and one pro and one con that they had from doing the interviews in their group. And you can write more if you want. You can it doesn't have to be like a bullet point. It can be like a paragraph, however you want to do this. But I'm just going to give kind of everyone a few minutes just to kind of self reflect and kind of self debrief, and then we're going to talk as a group. I'm going to stop sharing briefly and I'll share again. Okay, it looks like most people are finishing up, so I'm gonna share my screen again. And just like, oh, people are still going, but just like last time, does anyone kind of want to share their one pro and one con for personas? No.
I can share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I put it in the chat, but I think that with personas, there's opportunity to communicate information asynchronously to other people who might not be able to attend interviews. But I think it has to be in the context of knowing what the persona is trying to achieve. And then with the con of that is it can be very flattening to someone or to a group of people if you're just ideating off of the persona itself. It's very difficult to keep that in mind.
Thank you for sharing. Does anyone else want to share their pro and con for personas before we move on to interview?
I can share.
Okay.
So I kind of like that you can hone in to somebody's more specifics, and you get an idea as to more specifically how the things they do day to day. You can kind of extrapolate that from some of the things. And the cons are similar, as like you don't get a big enough sample size, like you get a very micro view, which is good and bad, I guess what I'm saying. So sometimes you need a bigger scope of the picture of the person or that type of person or that market. So it's good and bad having so much detail.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, does anyone want to share their pro and con of doing the interview when one person was the client and the rest of you were the design consultants?
I can go ahead on that one. I thought the pro was, well, I was the person being interviewed, and I felt like I got to put myself in the shoes of Mark and be like, get to know this person as a human instead of like a worker doing a task. But I think the cons of it were kind of related to that, where I was projecting what I thought they might do based on my own personal experience.
That's interesting. All right. Does anyone else want to share one more pro and one more con? If no one else wants to share, we can also just open it up to just talk about in general how we felt about the two different activities.
I can share. I guess a con. Now I'm normally pro interview, and I was surprised, and I guess I should not have been, because I knew where we were going. I was surprised at how long it took us to get to the design phase. We just ran out of time. I mean, we got some design stuff down, but it took a really long time with the interview, and so I guess that's one of the cons. That it takes longer. We got to the design phase much faster with the persona, even though I don't know if the design that we created would have been any good. I think that we probably would do better design this time around, but it took longer, which may not be a con, but it's a different time frame.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Does anyone have anything else to share? I know we have 5 minutes left, but does anyone have anything else they kind of want to share about doing the two different activities? You guys talked a lot about the differences, between, when you were doing the persona activity versus interviewing, but kind of anything else. And kind of going off of what Leslie said, you know, interviews do take a long time. Is there any way that we could combine having a persona and doing interviews if we were at a company and didn't have enough time to do interviews? Any ideas?
Possibly,
Mhm.
you could use interview surveys in lieu of person-to-person interviews. That might help you to reduce the overall time that you would spend.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a really good idea. Does anyone else have another idea?
I guess there's also observation, like the more, I guess, like typical anthropological approach that I've seen in some parts of some approaches to design. So that can also be faster because you can focus on what it is you're looking for and yeah, try to record like people's behavior or actions in a space.
Thanks for sharing. One thing that we kind of thought about, or one thing I thought about when I was creating this workshop, was using interviews, maybe like one or a few, to create the persona. So maybe interviewing people to then create a persona that you could use. But yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. Again, we have 3 minutes left, so I do want to make sure I get those links to you all that I said I would give to you. So I'm going to drop those in the chat. But again, thank you for coming to my workshop. I hope you got to see how helpful personas could be, especially when looking at them side by side with interviewing, but also how, we kind of have to be a little bit cautious when we're using personas. So yeah, thanks. If you guys have any questions or just want to chat while I'm putting the links in the chat, I'm happy to talk to you guys.
Question for you all. It's a pretty fabulous mural. How long did it take you to put it together?
That's a good question. I did it in like over like the course of a couple weeks, but I guess if I had to add it, maybe like about 8 hours.
Wow,
thanks
worked well.
My mural. So I just put in the chat the critical worksheets, interviewing that I told you guys about. And I'm also going to put in the links for our upcoming DT Gumbo, which is going to be hosted by Dr. Shema Abdal next Wednesday. And then I'm going to also put in the chat our DT breakfast if you want to see me again. At the end of this month.
And that's our last DT breakfast for the semester. So please come out and chat with us for DT breakfast. We have DT Gumbo next Wednesday, and we may have another one before the end of the semester. So as usual, sign up for our mailing list to find out about other events that we have going on, and just pop in and chat and come and hang out with us a few more times before the end of the semester.
All right. Well,
good.
Everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thanks
much.
so much.
Yeah, bye.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all. Bye. That was fun.
Bye.
And your interpreters will be dropping off. So thank you so much. Appreciate you providing the service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.